It comes like a fleeting memory. Whatever you grab
I guess that's
turns
right.
to dust. Like eye contact with a stranger.
How do you feel?
It's kind of funny. I feel kind of naked without the third camera.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't working, I just need it right there.
Naked.
I feel naked.
Well,
Yeah.
deep sigh.
Mm-hmm. To the shores. Oh, man.
Yeah, we're down one camera tonight.
Yeah.
So just nonstop face footage.
Face footage.
You don't get to see our logo up on the wall today.
I know, but it's there and it looks great.
It does look pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, man. I don't know where we're going to go. You and I had kind of a pretty intense conversation up to this. So I don't know if we want to start there or go
shores.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
All right.
Should we set that up?
Yeah, if you want to, or I can.
Oh, I asked if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I can jump around. Yeah. So just thinking about the idea of individuation. It's a Jungian idea, and there's kind of a difference between individuation and individualism and collectivism. So it's not being individualistic does not mean you're an individualism. It's not the same as individualism. And for example, the individualism kind of has you're kind of setting yourself apart in a way from society, where to individualize yourself, you kind of become sort of like the yin and yang of the individualism and the collective. It's sort of like the both two together. Not doing a very good job.
The Jungian term is individuate.
Individuate, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be an individual but not be individuated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's sort of I guess in the West, we kind of highly value individualism, which is sort of like how I'm different and not like anybody else and set apart from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And in the East, you kind of have a more of like a collectivist viewpoint. It's like I am my group. So whatever group you're part of, your family, your neighborhood, or it's like there's the individual is kind of lost a little bit. And to individuate is sort of to become fully who you are, not a false person, but a unique person that you are. So, for example, he gave is everyone has two eyes, two ears, and a mouth, and but everybody has a very distinct eyes, ears, and mouths. And the idea is that you become truly yourself, who you are. And obviously it's not a at once type thing, but it's a process. To individuate is a process. And that kind of came up just as I was thinking about sort of needs, wants, and choices. And
yeah, there was something you texted me about that I thought was really good. You think you can recall that?
Maybe. I mostly just ramble stuff and then Matt makes sense of it. No, I was thinking about how, how needing something is not good, but wanting something is. So when I was thinking, again, this is kind of semantics, but the idea that needing is kind of more of a lizard brain activity, like where I need food, I need shelter. It's something that it's kind of more of an extreme, like this might mean life or death. And then there's this other part where I want something. I want a new pair of pants, or I want to be in a relationship with you. And that's kind of the part that I was thinking about. Is like, it's very unhealthy to need to be in a relationship with somebody, because that's kind of a one-way thing. Like, I need you. Where I want to be in a relationship with you is sort of saying, here's what I desire. Do you desire the same thing? Or if you say, I need you, you're not really asking for the other person to participate. You're just needing them. It's not a matter of what they can reciprocate to, And then there's kind of the idea of choice. It seems like with wanting something, there's choice. And with needing something, there is no choice. That need that kind of needs to be satisfied. Where a want is something that would be nice. Like when you're in a relationship with someone, you want to be in a relationship with them, and it's a choice, and you're choosing to be in relationship, and the other person also has to choose to be in a relationship, to actually have a relationship. But if I need somebody to take care of me, that's not really a relationship. Like I need you to fulfill me. And, I think like a baby, when they're first born, they need their mother for sustenance and care. But as they grow up, they sort of start to kind of push away the parents, especially the mother, and start to kind of that individuation process. And then they start to choose and want to be with their parents or choose them. So I think I was just kind of going through and like, where are the areas that I feel like I have needs versus wants. And, it's like I want to be in relationship with my wife. Like that's a want, but it requires her to want me too. I want to be doing this podcast, but it also requires you to want to do that. And it seems like if you and I needed to do that, that changes the relationship a little bit. Does that make sense? I kind of threw out a whole bunch of stuff here, but
yeah. So I guess my initial thoughts are in the context of a relationship, like a romantic relationship, we tend to not think highly of people who are needy. If you say, my girlfriend or my wife is being needy, that's usually a negative thing.
Yeah.
Because it is one way. Whereas, what's the alternative? You could say of somebody that you need them, but you don't. You may need. It's a hard thing to parse without giving lots of examples, I think. But I think the thing that struck me about what you said is there are things that we often say that we need, but we're not being accurate in our speech there. And maybe we're not even seeing ourselves or seeing others properly. Because if I say I need you, or if I say of my girlfriend, I need you, the alternative to that would be to say, I want you. And there's something about the difference in tone of those two statements where the second, when I say I want you, it's a question, not a statement. I need you is a statement. But when I say I want you, then you have to respond. And what's that response going to be?
Yeah.
It may be, well, you can't have me. It may be you can't have me right now, or it may be you can't have me ever again, or it may be I want you to, or it might be I don't feel the same way. So that position is it's a proposal more than a statement. But when I say I need water, I could be dehydrated, and if I don't get water, I might have serious health consequences, or I might die. That's a statement. And other people might assist me in procuring something that I need for my survival. But I think that there's something really beautiful about the idea of getting those words more correct in different contexts, because as you said, there's also choice. And maybe I want something and I can't have it. Then I have to make a choice to what's the word? I have to make a choice to handle, perhaps suffer, but deal with my unreciprocated wanting. It could be in a relationship, or it could be something I really, really want. Like, when I was a kid, I really, really wanted rollerblades. and the year I wanted them, I didn't get them.
Yeah.
What do you do? Well, if you're thinking about yourself in terms of, I need this in order to have fun with my friends in the way that I want to have fun with them, or I need this in order to fit in order to look the way that I want to look, to be cool like the other kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't get it, and you don't have the ability to buy it for yourself, but it wasn't under the Christmas tree. And so, well, now who are you? You have to deal with who you are. I wanted something and I couldn't have it, and now I've got to deal with how that affects me. And I can choose to do that. Or I could choose to, throw a temper tantrum and convert that into anger at my parents, or anger at society, or anger at myself, or, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So when you want something, there's a choice. Not only is it a question in which you are giving agency to the person who's able to fulfill what you want, you're giving them the agency to respond truly. And then you have to truly deal with yourself. If you don't get it, how do you handle that? If you do get it, how do you handle that? I mean, I think I've experienced this many times in my life. You think you want something really badly, and then you get it, and it didn't fill the hole that you thought it would. It didn't bring you the warm feeling or the status, or it didn't solve the problem you thought that it would solve. Now you got to make a choice about that. Where did I go wrong? What was I seeing incorrectly?
Again, just kind of acknowledging the semantics aspect of our conversation. But even that, you wanted something. I would almost say that because I feel like wanting something is trying to be in proper relationship with the thing you want. So, I want a new pair of pants. It's like, well, what are you needing a new pair of pants for? It's like, well, I need it for work. It's like, okay, well, I don't have enough money to buy these pants. Okay, well then, so you're having this dialogue with yourself, and like, okay, how much do I want this? And is it worth me sacrificing something else for the thing that I want? Or is it not? You're sort of determining what the value of that is in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the money, you can just buy a pair of pants. I want a pair of pants. And you go buy a pair of pants. There could be other factors that you could throw in on top of that, but just the relationship that you have with it is like, I have the means to do this. I want this. And so I go and I get them, and there's not a conflict there, It's like, so you start getting in the conflicts whenever there's something wrong with that relationship, or if you have, 10,000 pairs of pants, something about that relationship. It's like, I want another pair of pants. It's like, well, is that really like a want? Like, oh, damn, I'm maybe kind of. Well, I guess that's hard because I'm starting to you start kind of breaching these sort of gray areas as far as, even the idea of like the difference between needing and wanting something. Like if I haven't eaten for 2 days, I need food. It's like, well, you can go longer than 2 days without food, but by day 10 or day 40, it's like that need, it's going from a want from having eaten an hour ago to wanting to eat again to 40 days where that want is actually more of a need. It's a survival kind of thing. But so like, where does that transition between a want and a need in that area?
Well, I think when it comes to need,
Mm-hmm.
you can need something for survival.
Mm-hmm.
That list is pretty short.
Mm-hmm.
Food, water, shelter. That's about it.
Yeah. Even maybe companionship to a degree, maybe.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold your horses, Michael.
I mean, that would come into survival of the species.
Mm-hmm. Oh, true.
An adult can fairly well run off into the woods, and as long as they can find themselves food, water, and shelter, they can live. It won't be a very meaningful life, I doubt. So yes to companionship. I mean, that's not true of a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Babies who are left untouched don't survive. And it's not just for lack of food and water and shelter. It's for also lack of love.
Mm-hmm.
So that list is pretty short. But then there's all kinds of needs that are followed by the sentence, so that. I need a job so that I can continue providing food, water, and shelter for my children. I don't need that job exactly to survive. I can, if I don't have that job, I can find another one, or find another way to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are wants. And I'm not really comfortable saying that those are somehow superfluous and simply individualistic and unnecessary, because that's somewhat of the Buddhist idea, which is that most troubles in life are downstream of desire. And so if you remove all your desires, then you can reach nirvana. That's never made sense to me, because I think, yes, all troubles are downstream of desire. I don't disagree with that. But also all creativity, all love, all, well, really things that are meaningful, things that you would consider good, are downstream of desire. You might need food to survive. And yet the food you eat isn't just nutrition. It's good. It's good food. You know, people take great time and energy to create food that is good, not just food that's edible.
Yeah.
And so, and that's some desire. That's a want manifesting something good and beautiful. And if you get rid of all desire, then you not only get rid of the trouble, but you throw the baby out with the bathwater. So want or desire is what makes the world a good place.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, I guess kind of depending on who talked about Buddhism, there is sort of like, it's more about having a proper relationship with what you want. I think that's...
And I don't know very much about Buddhism.
Yeah.
So I'm not picking on it specifically.
I know very little too,
Yeah. Well, what does that mean, to be in proper relationship with something?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. I think that's something that it's something to continually check. And I think that's, you know, whether it's with our kids or with our, you know, significant others, or even just friendship, you know, it's like there's a part that you're always navigating that proper relationship in those circumstances. Is, you know, all I'm doing is thinking about myself, and I haven't considered you at all, you know, and it's like, well, actually sometimes that's okay. It's like, hey, Matt, I need some extra attention, you know, and you're willing to give that. But at some point that's no longer the case. And now, Michael, you're just being narcissistic, or your ego is blowing out of proportion. And you start to go out of proper relationship. You know, you see that, you know, with my wife, whenever, you know, she needs me to pay attention to her need. But maybe that is, it's like you start to get out of that proper relationship. It's sort of everything's focused on me, whenever right now in this relationship, it kind of needs to be more towards her and what she needs, you know. And sometimes, so it's kind of like a pendulum that kind of swings back and forth, and not exactly like, oh, you get this, I get this week, you get next week, I get next, you know, it's not that. I think that's why it's talked about having a proper relationship. Or even like you said, that you buy something and then a week later it doesn't have that same fulfillment you thought it would. And I think that feeling that we get is sort of saying, yeah, you were a little bit out of proportion to the value of that thing that you bought. You thought I was going to fill this void, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
And sort of like a reality check.
In which case, I would say that you're not in proper relationship with the void inside of you. Like, do you remember starter jackets?
Yeah.
It's like a really big thing when we were in middle school. And I wanted one so bad. And it took months and months And by the time I got one, the fab was almost over. And it would just pain me every morning when I'd get to school and everybody had their starter jacket, you know, A&M, UT, Rice, whatever. And I finally got one and I was like, oh, that didn't fill the void. And so I think it's easy to experience that when you're a kid. Maybe we experience it a little bit less as we're an adult, but I think the thing that you're not in proper relationship with isn't the starter jacket. It's with the void inside of you that you mistakenly thought that that item, once procured, would satisfy something in you, and it doesn't. So what is that it isn't satisfying? And you don't know, so you actually have to look at it and say, why isn't this satisfying me? What was it that I was actually pining for? What is it that I actually desire? And maybe it's, again, to fit in because maybe it's I'm insecure. Maybe it's that I just don't know what I like yet. And I was mistaken and I thought I liked that. And then I got it and realized I didn't really like it. But you have to look at yourself then. And I think it's similar with a relationship. When you say, you talk about you and your wife, it may be that, and this isn't specific, I'm just going to use husband and wife. It's not specific to you and Allison, but, maybe your wife feels like, oh, I totally had this worked out, and then it's all...
You disclaimered it.
Fleeting away. Let me take a sip here. The void.
Proper relation.
Yeah. So a woman may feel toward her romantic partner that she needs him. I need you. I need you because that's when you're around, that's when I feel safe. That's when I feel loved. That's when I feel validated. And it isn't that those aren't good things. But if she needs the partner for that, then what's happening when the partner isn't around? You're not loved. You're not safe. You're invalid. Why do you feel that way about yourself? Why can't you stand up on your own 2 feet? I think that it's easy to get confused and think, well, maybe take it back to the idea of that void. There's some void in her that is being filled, but to rely on another person to fill that void completely and at all times is, well, it's that word, it's needy. And that guy, David Schnarch, we talked about when Allison was on the podcast, he said something where he said, people sometimes will say, I have a right to my feelings. And he said, yeah. And I say to them, you do, and you should keep them. And he said, people who say something like, I have a right to my feelings are really just saying, I have the right to regulate everyone else around me such that I don't feel the things I don't want to feel. And that's to minimize yourself. I'm dependent on everything and everyone around me to regulate my feelings. That's not good. Yeah.
What does that look like? Because I can kind of picture a person doing that as far as saying like, I have a right to my feelings. I have a right to feel this way.
Right.
And then you'd said that basically they're determining that you have to be okay with how they feel in the situation around them. Is that kind of what you were saying?
I'm struggling to come up with a good example.
Because it makes sense. Like I just thinking of, basically there's kind of a not a joke, but a meme or something where an employee goes up to the manager and says, hey, I just want to tell you I struggle with depression. And like, oh, okay, cool. What are you doing about that? Or what are you doing to help with that? And they're like, oh no, I'm just telling you this so that you can work around me.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And it's not that
I have depression and I don't want to deal with it. And so whatever problems that are coming up around that in my life, I'm simply going to not take ownership of those and instead just let you know that I'm depressed, and then the problems aren't problems. It's like, what? You're not showing up to work on time. Well, remember I told you I'm depressed. Okay. Me knowing that, it's like you're now expecting me to be okay with that you're not on time all the time. I'm not. I'm not going to change the hours of the business to fit your depression. And that's a position in which the individual is saying, I don't want to look at the void. I don't want to look at what isn't functioning in my life. I don't want to take ownership of it. I don't want to consider the things in my life that I have a relationship of need when I really should have a relationship of want. I would just rather inform the world of my issues and expect the world to step lightly around me.
I don't know where it might have been a podcast or one of the books, maybe Young, I'm not sure, but it could have been Young because it was more a present day example. Too many disclaimers.
Just get to the point.
Just get to the point. Oh, shoot. Totally lost that one.
It's okay. We're both struggling with it tonight.
Yeah. Do not do disclaimers. Oh, yeah. That we do, I'll try to kind of talk around it, see if I can hit it, but this sort of idea of not dealing with the things that we're going through. Well, okay, maybe come in a different direction, because here's kind of the thing about needing something and wanting something is like needing something is very strong, and like I say, like I need you to be here now, and there's sometimes when that statement actually kind of works well, like I just lost my dad or something. It's like I need you here now, just for this moment. I need someone to kind of carry me, and I think there is something in it that might be a little bit stronger than a want, or it's a strong want, and that's really healthy. But at the same time, if you live in this state of need, it just seems like you would begin to kind of spiral. Everything would kind of spiral around you because you're not in proper relationship. You're expecting others to come and meet those needs. And, at some point someone's gonna be like, I'm just tired of this. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. Well, we want our children, I think, inherently to grow up and be self-sufficient. We want them to be able to take care of themselves. And that is to say that as an individual grows up, we want the things that fall into the category of need to reduce in number. A baby needs to be fed, but we don't want to be feeding a 24-year-old. We would like for that person to be able to feed themselves. Not only feed themselves by, figuring out how to use a fork and putting food in their mouths, but also cook the food. Be able to feed yourself when no one's around. Be able to go grocery shopping and pick things out and bring them home, ideally to your own home, your own space. And it isn't because we want you out of our space as the parents. It's that it's good for you to have your own space. It's good for you to have that autonomy and that ownership, and to take a space and make it your own. That is a pleasure if you're capable of it. And we want you to be capable of it because we want you to experience that pleasure. And that individuation that Jung talks about. If you love someone, you want them to individuate.
I think I caught it because it kind of goes with the idea of individuation is feeling uncomfortable. Like actually feeling uncomfortable is a good thing, because almost nobody changes until they feel uncomfortable. And I feel like today there's a lot of, I feel uncomfortable, so something is wrong. And it actually could be that you're feeling uncomfortable because it's right. Like that means that you need to change. Like there's even just business wise, sometimes you just get comfortable in what you're doing, and all of a sudden you start to be uncomfortable. Like I'm doing some growth as a business owner, and I had some friends kind of mention some areas I could grow in, and part of me is like, no, I don't want to, and then I feel more uncomfortable because I know they're right. And so I was feeling uncomfortable. What I could do is just push them away and be like, no, you guys are stupid.
Yeah, you're wrong. You're not
wrong.
seeing properly.
Mm-hmm. And this makes me feel uncomfortable. I want to go back to feeling, comfortable and not stretched. And so.
Well, I think it's really interesting that even with base needs like hunger, hunger presents itself as something which can be described as a pang. I think I said pain, but also pang, pangs of hunger. I mean, when you first get hungry, it's like, oh, I'm hungry. And then a bit later, I'm uncomfortably hungry. I can't concentrate on other things. I'm uncomfortable. And then a bit later, it can start feeling painful. And it reminds me of that idea that pain is information.
Oh, totally.
Your body is telling you, I need nourishment. I need sustenance, or else things are going to start going real bad real quick. And pain is what gets our attention.
Well, even in that example that you gave is sort of, depending on what your eating habits are, that you could have that sort of desire every 2 hours. But something that if you've ever fasted or just intermittent fasted, you kind of realize that actually, no, that pain is also good. Like it tells me that my body's now processing a different, I don't know all the nutritional facts of this, but it's like it starts processing different types of fat whenever you go past a certain point, and that's actually good.
Yeah,
and that's one thing. It's good to fast and have that pain. It's like, or a cold plunge, like you're in pain, but it's actually good pain. When you work out, I mean, there's a lot of examples we've given a lot of times on here. So there's something about feeling uncomfortable that's actually good. But it does seem like in our society, like if you're uncomfortable, then somebody needs to fix it.
Well, that's a very naive idea.
Yeah. Or even like in marriage or whatever, it's like, hey, I don't feel loved, and you need to fix that.
Yeah.
And
that's the pathology. Is that coming from outside?
Yeah, it's outside.
Wow. So are you playing music right now? I think that's the pathology that's downstream of having your need and your want mixed up. Like, if I need you to love me, and if you are not around or are not actively showing me your love, then I don't feel loved, and I'm not okay with that. And now I need to control your behavior so I feel the way that I want to feel, or in my mind, need to feel.
Yeah.
And that's no good. Just like it would be no good for a 24-year-old man to feel the pains of hunger and say, I'm hungry, I need you to cook me something. It's like, it's true that you're hungry. And while I do enjoy cooking for you, I'm sorry, I'm doing other things right now, and you should be perfectly capable of cooking for yourself.
Or even waiting an hour and a half and we're going to eat dinner or something that with your
like
kids,
that,
I'm so hungry. You're like, we're going to eat in an hour. It's like, I'm dying. Like, no, you're not dying.
Not even close. When I, I've never really been very hungry in my life. I don't think many of us are in the Western world. It's like we're not
on purpose.
What we feel when we say we're hungry, I don't think is hunger.
Yeah.
We eat 3 times a day. Real hunger, which I think a lot of humans experienced over the millions of years of evolution, is hard to come by these days. And it is extraordinarily motivating. Maybe the closest I felt to that was when I did like a 3-day backpacking trip through Yosemite. and you're expending so much energy, and you have to pack in all your food, so you don't bring very much food, and feeling that hunger. And then what's surprising is you don't have to eat very much, and you feel your body sort of roar back into energy and health. Feeling the lack of energy because of the lack of nutrition, and then giving yourself something small to eat and it coming back, and you're like, wow. I'm actually experiencing the relationship between food and my body. Whereas on a day-to-day basis, I don't experience that relationship, because if I have the slightest desire for food, I just eat.
Yeah. When you were saying that, there's a sort of almost like, is there a metaphor in this? So in the West, we eat and we sort of expand our stomachs, and to a point where we actually can intake more food. You always hear this, I don't know, the old wives tell, like, you eat a lot Thanksgiving morning so that when Thanksgiving comes, you can eat a lot of food. It's
right.
like, so you expand your stomach so you can actually
not
eat more.
Eating before Thanksgiving dinner is not the proper strategy if you want to consume as much food as possible.
Yeah. So like, even like when you're talking about backpacking and stuff like that, it's like your stomach does kind of shrink. And so that desires, I don't know if it's a desire, but it doesn't take as much to feel full.
To satiate yourself.
Yeah. But if you're used to plenty, whether it's alcohol or whatever, if you haven't had alcohol in a long time, you have a beer or a sip of whiskey, you're like, whoa, I feel good,
Yeah, right.
But if you're used to a large intake of something, then, you actually need more of it to feel that same effect. And so I think that metaphor is almost just like how we are in the West in a lot of areas, that everything is so readily available and abundant that we have such a high tolerance, and we're always wanting more, like whether it be more money, more drink, more food, more government care, more, it's like we're just always wanting more. And that there's nothing that could ever satiate that want, or that we think it's almost like we think we need it or owed it or something. And I mean, it's not, and again, it's not like any of those things are necessarily bad in and of themselves. There's something about it
goes back to the idea of proper relationship.
Yeah.
I think in general, the relationship between my body and hunger isn't really in proper relationship. Because I don't understand it very well, because I don't interact with it very much. I just eat because food's always available.
Yeah.
I think we're not in proper relationship with other things. Like social media comes to mind, because we have these phones on our body all the time, and at the slightest, waiting in line at the grocery store or the whatever store, and you have 30 seconds, flip that phone out, pull up Twitter, pull up Instagram, pull up Facebook, whatever. I think you forget what those things are. You forget whether or not you actually even like them. I have had the experience before where I'm feeling, the way I think about it is feeling sick, kind of sick to my stomach, which isn't necessarily I'm not feeling a illness. Well, maybe it is, but not like virally induced or the result of some sort of injury to my physiological self. I feel sick, like anxious sick, or sick, like embarrassed sick, something like that. That feeling in the pit of your stomach. Sometimes I feel that, and I try to, when I feel that way, if I feel that way for very long, I try to sit down and write out what it is that I think is making me feel that way. And I was going to say more often than not, but I think I've only done that twice. And both times social media was on that list. And it isn't that I could even tell you why it's making me sick, but I feel sick from it. And I think that's because I in those times have started to have a improper relationship with it. Just mindlessly scrolling. I'm not thinking about being creative and posting. I'm not wondering what my friends are doing.
Yeah.
I'm not admiring good art or good intellect, not reading things relevant to myself or the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just scrolling,
looking
for something that grabs my attention because I'm bored and I don't want to engage in where I am, which might be the line at the store, or it might be at the table with my kids. And that makes me sick, that I would rather mindlessly scroll than engage with my kids. And while I don't think that that's often true, the times that I've felt that way does make me feel sick. And I think it's because it's revealing to me, oh, you have this improper relationship, partly with social media, maybe partly with your kids, maybe partly with your willingness to be socially engaged. Because when I think about it, if I use the example of standing in the line at the grocery store, how much more interesting would it be if I just struck up a conversation with the person behind me?
They'd probably freak out.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
You know, but if you're looking for something unexpected, which is exciting, it's much easier found in the person next to you than it is on social media, because social media is just a wall of homogenous smiles and attractiveness, and you know, there's nothing unexpected there. You don't pull up social media and find something unexpected. So again, I think it's that pain, which is announcing an improper relationship with something. And like the void, that the thing you wanted and didn't get, or the thing you wanted and did get didn't fill, you have to look at it and say, why didn't that work? Or why am I feeling this way? It's kind of like your friends telling you there's some areas you need to grow in, and that's uncomfortable. It reminded me of, I posted this little, or reposted this video on our Instagram account of this guy talking about lobsters. You know, lobsters are these squishy blob of a creature that has an exoskeleton.
Cockroaches of the sea is what I've heard.
Yeah. They have an exoskeleton, and as the lobster grows, the exoskeleton doesn't grow. And it isn't until the lobster starts feeling the pressure of that skeleton that it realizes, okay, I've got to go take cover under some rocks and shed this skeleton and molt it and grow a new one. And then the guy said, if lobsters had doctors, they would never grow. Because we tend to feel pain or discomfort, and we go to the doctor and we say what's wrong with us. And this goes back to you saying, it isn't what's wrong with you, it's what's right with you.
Yeah.
That what you're feeling is telling you something that you need to know. And it isn't that something's wrong.
So, something's right.
Yeah.
I love it. That was actually the thing that brought that to memory.
Oh, that lobster video?
That video that you sent me, I love it. Like, let me tell you something that you sent me that you already know. That happens so often. Like, did you see that thing? You're like, yeah, I sent that to you.
I sent
like,
that to you, literally.
I do love that example of sort of, you know, it's such a visceral example of we are growing and the shell that is no longer useful to us, and we have to shed that shell. And you're not going to do it until it creates pain.
Yeah, why would you?
Why would you? Yeah. And the idea of having to go to the doctor and we're going to get prescribed drugs or something like that, rather than face the pain of whatever it might be. And don't get me wrong, there's places for drugs and antidepressants, all that kind of stuff, but there's something that we have to learn to face that, the pain, and let it inform us what that is. What do you need to shed?
Things like analgesics, like pain relievers, Tylenol, aspirin, ibuprofen, whatever, have always, to me, seemed like a silly thing. Because if I have a headache, well, that's probably telling me something. Telling me that I'm overly fatigued, or I'm experiencing too much loud noise, or overstimulated somehow. I don't know. You know, it's telling me something. And if you take a Tylenol to make it go away, well, then you're not paying attention to the reason you got it in the first place. So I've always avoided taking those. So I'm like, okay, no, I've got a headache. I need to do something about that, not mute it. I need to respond to it.
Yeah.
And if I mute it, then I can't respond to it because I won't know if what I'm doing is working. I don't think that perspective necessarily scales up to like, if I'm going to go into surgery.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing. Or
I don't need the morphine, the anesthesia.
Right. Or it reminds me of, I had this friend who was a family friend years ago. I was a little bit younger. She was pregnant with twins, and she was very, very against any drugs in her body, pain relievers, things like that while she was pregnant. While she was pregnant, she got an abscessed tooth, had to go get a root canal, and did it with no pain medication. And to me, I'm like, I think that's the time when you can, you probably want to mute that.
Yeah.
So that's not telling you useful information once the doctor knows the remedy.
Yeah. There's you might have sent this to me too, but there's this doctor, these people who are in this room, like 5 or 6 people, like wanting to sleep. Did you send this to me?
Mm-mm.
Okay, good. Something new. And they're all like, yeah, doctor, so what do we do? She's like, well, here's something that's a really easy thing. Just be off your phone an hour before bedtime. And they're like, oh, I don't think I can do that.
Yeah, definitely can't
do that. And like, he's like, how about, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. He kept kind of going down like, no, like, give me a drug or something else. So I don't, it's like they didn't want it.
Right.
They do almost anything else.
Give me an antidote to the poison that I'm taking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just, I think that was a great sort of meme of how we address a lot of our issues and problems today. Is we're not willing to kind of maybe make the sacrifice. I mean, go, get up and go take a walk today in the morning. It's like just a mile, whatever it might be.
That's been such an amazing thing. I got divorced almost 8 years ago. And as a part of that process, I started doing yoga and exercising most days of the week, usually 4 or 5 days of the week. And then a few years ago, you and I got into this breathing, like the Wim Hof stuff. And we read that book, Breath by James Nestor. And then I think as downstream of that, probably by getting introduced to Wim Hof, started getting into cold therapy. And I was thinking recently how much that has improved my life. Those 4 things, let's say, yoga, exercise, breathing, and cold therapy, have made my life better, so much better. I feel more clear than I used to. I feel more invigorated and motivated, healthier. Just the feeling has been incredible. But all of those things take tremendous effort. And mostly, to the extent that I'm willing ever to give people advice, which is very rarely, I think partly because of my dad. My dad said that he never gave advice, and he would say, because you know what they say about advice, the wise don't need it and the fools won't take it.
I love it.
Giving advice is almost always ill-advised.
That's your advice?
Yeah, that's my advice. But if somebody, it's very hard to recommend those things to people because they don't want to do them. So I work in the tech industry and I'm also a musician. And so wrist problems have been something I've dealt with. And there was a number of years where my wrists were hurting really badly and it was affecting my ability to play and type on a keyboard, and started trying to figure out solutions for this. And people were talking about surgeries where you get your nerves moved, and talking about all kinds of different techniques for getting rid of this wrist pain. And I finally found what for me ended up being the answer. And the answer was the way that we type on the keyboard on our computers, QWERTY, what that is, that's the layout of the letters on the keyboard, is one of the most horrifically unergonomic designs for your hands possible. And it was designed that way specifically because when the typewriter was first invented, the arms of the typewriter swang up from under rather than more modern typewriters where they swing on top. It swung under, and they had no spring return mechanism, so they just fell down with gravity. And so if you had a word with two letters that had arms adjacent to one another, they would bind a lot. And so they basically tried to make letters as far away from each other as possible, physically. Adjacent letters in words far away physically on the keyboard. And also they wanted a way to sell this novel thing. And so they made it so that you could type the word typewriter all on the top row so that the salespeople could give it to them. Anyways, it was a horribly unergonomic design. Almost immediately, this guy named Dvorak devised a much better keyboard layout for your hands. That's gotten revised again over the decades. And yet that bad design stuck because once it got adopted, it was too hard to get people to change. I switched. So I now type in a keyboard layout that's called Colmac, which is a derivation of Dvorak, which was designed to make the keyboard ergonomical. And I work in tech, so I type on the keyboard all day, every day. And I switched, and I have not had wrist pain in almost 10 years since I switched. 0.
Yeah.
And I work in tech, and I have people all the time saying that they're struggling with wrist pain. And I have told everybody about this solution, and 0 people have switched.
Oh, of course. Like I wouldn't switch.
Yeah. You're like, I will just keep the pain rather than take the pain of solving the pain,
Exactly.
because it is a pain to relearn a keyboard layout. But I'm so much happier. My wrists don't hurt. My typing experience is much more pleasurable, in part because it's absent of pain, but in part too, it's more ergonomic. So it just feels good. But people don't do it.
That's super fascinating because I mean, I just would be honest. Like I would not change.
Why? If you had
It takes too much time.
wrist pain, you just stick with the pain.
Well, I don't have wrist pain right now, so I would probably, even though I know what you're saying is true, it would be ideal for me to change now before I have the wrist pain and I have to go through the trouble of switching, even with the pain. I just think it's more of like, I think I'm an example of, it's like until you experience pain, you're not going to change.
Well,
like you wouldn't have changed if you didn't experience.
Yeah,
pain.
true, definitely true. But I'm extending that to say people will actually continue on with pain.
Oh, true.
If the solution itself is painful. And that's the idea of, I just want a pill.
Yeah.
I'm having these sleeping troubles. Well, stop looking at your phone an hour before bed. Nah, I'll just stick with the sleeping troubles.
Yeah.
Unless you have a pill, something that is of 0 effort to me, I'll just accept pain. And then maybe just blame it on other people, or maybe blame it on society, or maybe bottle that up into anger that'll just come out and ruin my marriage later.
Totally.
I think we have to listen to the pain and in part, let it inform us. And in part, we need to do what it says. You're feeling this pain. You're having this struggle. It's a good thing because it's telling you something you need in order to make your life better. And that's the question is, do you want to make your life better? And of course, everyone's answer is yes. But the next question is, do you have a proper relationship with that idea of making your life better? Which would mean to say, in order to make your life better, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. Because there's parts of the way your life is right now, and there's parts of who you are right now that are preventing your life from becoming better. And changing those takes work. And sometimes it's yoga. Sometimes it's cold plunge. Sometimes it's take 10 minutes, 30 super deep breaths and hold for as long as you can. And it sucks.
Yeah.
Until you start feeling transforming your body, and then it's awesome, and you look forward to it.
Or if you're dealing with anger, just, step away for a second. Go walk outside. I mean, there's so many things that we can do that are really small to kind of make those changes. Because I think something you're talking about in all this is sort of like I was trying to kind of, you mentioned a bunch of these things. I was like, okay, what's our misunderstanding here? Because it's like we have a need in our Western culture that we feel that it's almost like we're obligated to. And I think it probably is just comfort. I don't want to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it isn't that you
can say, I want to not feel uncomfortable. Maybe, I don't know. It's like there's also a part like it's not good to be in a state of constant distress or uncomfort. Like there's something that is actually can be hard on your immune system or whatever it might be. But at the same time, it's also not good. It's also not good to not have any stress that doesn't cause you to grow.
Okay.
Let
me try this on you.
All right.
So, comfort is good.
Mm-hmm.
You should have comfort.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you should ever say, I want to minimize discomfort. Because discomfort is telling you something. It's something important. And as a couple weekends ago, I had bought these new sandals. This brand of leather sandals that I really like. I've had a pair before, and they were my favorite summer sandals, and that pair wore out, so I bought a new pair. And for some reason, I'm having like a hell of a time breaking this pair in. Mm-hmm. And the first couple times I wore them, I had blisters on the back of my feet in like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a while, and I was going to Deep Eddy to go swim, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna wear these. And I wore them because I was like, I think they're kind of broken enough now, and I wore them and ended up having to park really far away. And as I was walking up to Deep Eddy, the skin on the back of both of my ankles ripped. And it was very painful. I mean, a blister when it rips open, and especially, so I took the shoes off and I just walked across the parking lot. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was in the parking lot of Deep Eddy. It's not very big, but it's a black parking lot. It's the summer. It was pretty hot. Mm-hmm. It was uncomfortably hot, but I was like, okay, just pick up the pace a little bit. I'll get there. And about 45 minutes later, I stood up to walk again, and I realized I had burn blisters on the bottom of both of my feet from walking on the hot concrete. Mm-hmm. And that was very uncomfortable. And then I remembered my mom telling me that when she was a kid, when school got out, she said her and her 7 brothers and sisters would take their shoes off, and she said, and I don't remember ever putting them back on again until school started again. And I thought, okay, burning my feet on the pavement was uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's also telling me that I'm not properly conditioned
I love it.
for the world. Like if walking for 30 seconds on a hot piece of concrete is injuring my body, maybe my body needs that injury and needs some more exposure.
Yeah. It's so funny because I so agree with you on this, but I could see, I could definitely see the pushback on that, but if there's something, well, because then you might get calluses on your feet, and then maybe your feet aren't as pretty or whatever it might be. And,
well, and people can have their lines wherever they'd like to draw them. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But for me, that was an element of, I should probably just walk without shoes more often, because I pretty much wear shoes always. Mm-hmm. And just give my feet a little bit more exposure to the world, because your feet should and do have calluses, whether you want them or not.
Yeah,
they are your feet. That's the way that they are. But then I thought about did you ever read Lonesome Dove?
Yeah. No, I watched the movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But just in general, in the 1800s, the idea of a cowboy or a ranger was going to be out on the trail for months at a time. He didn't have the luxury of complaining about his feet. And yet, there's something that we romanticize about those people. They are to be admired. They are admirable. And they have a different handle on what to consider comfortable versus uncomfortable. And really no need for comfort at all. Only need for accomplishing the goals that they've set out to do.
It makes me think of a Band of Brothers, as far as, when you're in real shit positions and then you see them in a different place where it's still shit, but it's a lot better than where they were. They almost are celebrating as if it's as if they're in a 5-star hotel or something like that. There is something about that. Even if you're really rich and you're used to having these really expensive, getaways, or it's really hard to have a Motel 6 moment or something like that. You're so desensitized or overly pampered or whatever that you can't.
It's like that show Schitt's Creek. Did you watch that?
Oh my God. I watched a couple, I think maybe a season or so. Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
But there is something, I think there's something that, again, we see this built in a lot of religions where they have, no matter if you're poor or rich, you fast during certain times and certain seasons. And, sort of like the DMV or, everyone's participating in the same thing, no matter your socioeconomic status. And I think there's something really healthy about that.
Well, I guess you could say, the story of Schitt's Creek is there's this family and they're very rich and hoity-toity and arrogant and all of these things and used to their comforts, and then they get kicked out and are living in the Motel 6, and it's funny, right? And you might say, well, okay, why can't I just be rich and comfortable? And maybe an answer is, well, because you're excluding from your own experience so many things that if you knew, your life could be more full. Something like that. And that's the case because we wouldn't watch a story. So you try to tell a story about this. The person who's comfortable and has everything is thrown into a position where they're uncomfortable and don't have anything. And then what happens? I suppose it's one of two things. That person grows as a character, as a result of that. And maybe they claw back some of their comforts, or maybe they find some part of themselves that they had lost in the midst of the comfort. And that's a good thing. That's a story you want to watch, which to me tells you that in the midst of your comfort, you are blind to things that if you weren't blind to, you would be better. It would be better off for you. Because the alternative to that is a story where there's someone rich in their comforts is thrown into discomfort, and then they whine and scream and act as if they're in agony and continue to do so for the rest of the story. No one wants to watch that story.
Yeah.
We're not interested in that. And we're also we're not interested in just watching someone be rich in their comforts, because it's not a story. Nothing's happening. No need for anything to happen because there's no discomfort, there's no pain, there's no new information.
And usually those, if we do watch those ones, the comfort ones, they're painting a false picture because, lifestyles of the rich and famous. When I was growing up, it was like, they show the beautiful house and all the things. It's like,
yeah, it's just Instagram.
Yeah, that's not real life.
Yeah.
Like, and there's something about that is kind of a false picture of what is real. So,
well, I think we've done it.
Yeah, totally. We kind of went all over the place.
I want to end this episode.
I choose to.
But I don't need to.
Yeah.
But I will choose to.
Yeah.
But if you want something different, I will confront that difference and choose how to respond
Well, I think that's the one part we didn't address very much is the choice part.
Yeah.
I think there's something super fascinating in that aspect. Maybe we tackle that maybe next time or something.
Okay. I'll make a note.
All right. Well, cool, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and listening. And if you have any thoughts on some of this, I know some of it's semantics, and there's kind of a gray area between needs and wants, but it definitely seems like there's some distinction to be made. So, and yeah, it's something I'm kind of struggling through and thinking about right now. It's like, what do I need? What is it that I want? And I want to be more active in my choosing what I want.
Thanks for talking to me about it.
Love you guys. Cheers.
Love you out there.